There is something wrong with the clock the whole world is running on. Not poetically wrong, not philosophically wrong. Wrong in a way you can prove with arithmetic on a napkin. And the longer I sat with that wrongness, the less I could convince myself it was an accident. Start with the most obvious thing. The Gregorian calendar, on your wall, in your phone, running every deadline and fiscal quarter of modern civilization, makes no mathematical sense. 4 different month lengths crammed into a pattern so irregular that children cannot memorize it without a physical trick involving their knuckles. February shorter than every other month in most years, then suddenly longer for reasons most people cannot fully explain. Quarters that refuse to align, weeks that never divide cleanly into months, months that never divide cleanly into years. Look at it honestly, and it stops resembling a tool designed for human beings and starts resembling something designed to keep human beings slightly confused, permanently slightly dependent, permanently needing someone or something external to tell them where they are in time. Stay with me, because there was always something else. A calendar so internally consistent, so synchronized with the rhythms of the natural world, that the moment you grasp its logic, the Gregorian system stops looking merely inconvenient and starts looking intentionally broken. 13 months, 28 days each. 13 times 28 is 364. 52 perfect weeks, 4 identical 7-day cycles every single month without a single exception across the entire year. Add 1 transitional day outside the monthly count, a threshold day, a 0 day, a day that cultures across the ancient world independently designated as sacred, and you reach 365, 1 complete solar year, exact, clean, repeating without adjustment. The deeper I went, the clearer it became that this was not a marginal idea invented by modern reformers. This was the operational calendar of civilizations that built structures we still cannot replicate. The Maya, the ancient Egyptians, the Druids of pre-Roman Britain, the Lakota, the Yoruba. 13 months of 28 days surfacing independently across separate continents, separate millennia, without any documented exchange between them. The same answer arrived at again and again from entirely different directions. That is not coincidence. That demands an explanation. And here is the part that should stop you. You do not need to look at ancient ruins or historical records to find the evidence. It is inside you. The human menstrual cycle averages 28 days, 13 complete cycles per solar year. Not mythology, not metaphor, biology. One of the oldest timing mechanisms in nature, older than written language, older than government, older than any ruler who ever decided how many days would fit in a month. The human body arrived at this rhythm before civilization existed, to name it. Then there is the moon. The synodic cycle, the time from one full moon to the next, runs approximately 29.5 days. The sidereal cycle, the moon's actual orbit measured against the fixed stars, is 27.3 days. The 28-day month lands almost precisely between them. It is the mean of the moon's own movement, as though the people who built this calendar looked at the sky and the body simultaneously, recognized that both were keeping the same time, and decided to build from that alignment rather than override it. What we use instead has months named after Roman emperors: July for Julius Caesar, August for Augustus. Month lengths literally rearranged by imperial decree, days stripped from one month and added to another so that certain emperors' names would not be attached to shorter months than their rivals. The measurement of time converted into a status competition before it was ever allowed to function as an administrative tool. This is the moment the question becomes unavoidable. When did time stop belonging to the natural world and start belonging to whoever held power? Because what the historical record actually shows is that this story did not end in antiquity. At a specific and verifiable moment in the early 20th century, a serious and well-resourced movement arose to fix the calendar. Not a fringe movement, not a philosophical hobby, a sustained, internationally coordinated campaign backed by some of the most credible reform minds of the era. Moses B. Cotsworth, a British statistician, published in 1902 a meticulous mathematical case for calendar reform. His proposal reconstructed the ancient 13-month architecture, 13 months of 28 days each, every one identical, every quarter perfectly equal, every year opening on the same day of the week without fail. He designated the 13th month Sol, positioned it between June and July at midsummer, at the height of the solar year, exact, clean, repeating without adjustment. George Eastman, founder of Kodak, one of the defining industrialists of American history, read the case and did not merely agree with it, he implemented it. In 1928, Kodak adopted the International Fixed Calendar as its internal operating system and ran on it for 61 years. He did this because the results were clear: productivity up, administrative costs down, financial records cleaner, quarters honest, the schedule rational for the first time. Eastman then spent years testifying, lobbying, and funding public campaigns to extend this reform globally. The League of Nations formally took up calendar reform in the 1920s. Committees were established. Hundreds of submissions arrived from governments, corporations, religious bodies, and private citizens across the world. The International Fixed Calendar was among the leading proposals. The momentum was real. The institutional backing was substantial. And then it stopped. No famous vote, no decisive debate, no superior argument recorded anywhere. The committees dissolved. The momentum drained away. By the mid-1930s, the conversation was over. The Gregorian calendar stayed. The fixed calendar was filed away as though it had never had serious support at all. The standard explanation is inertia. But inertia does not explain how the most powerful industrialists of an era could fail to shift a system they admitted was inferior. Inertia does not explain how hundreds of submissions to an international body produce no recorded conclusion. Inertia does not explain gaps in an archive. Ask instead, who needed the chaos to continue? Irregular months produce irregular accounting. Irregular accounting requires professional intermediaries, entire industries of accountants, administrators, and financial specialists whose expertise exists specifically to navigate a complexity that a rational calendar would eliminate overnight. The Gregorian calendar is not just inconvenient, it is economically productive for the people whose income derives from managing its irrationality.
The pattern shows up in other places, too. Every time a system emerges that synchronizes human beings with natural cycles, with the body, with light, with the turning of seasons, it tends eventually to be replaced by a system that synchronizes human beings with institutions instead, with mechanical clocks, with fiscal years beginning in January because a Roman king assigned that month to the god of doorways at a time when no one had yet conceived of a quarterly earnings report. The physical record makes it stranger. The stone circles of Britain, not just Stonehenge, but dozens of lesser-known sites across the landscape, carry markers consistent with a 28-station lunar calendar encoded in stone. The Aubrey holes at Stonehenge, 56 pits in a precise circle, 56, 2 cycles of 28. Researchers have proposed for decades that these features track the lunar cycle in exactly the way a 13-month calendar requires. The mainstream archaeological literature acknowledges this interpretation and then sets it aside. The question of why it is not more central to how we understand the site is one I kept returning to without satisfying answers. The Maya long count, the most precisely engineered timekeeping system produced by any pre-industrial civilization, rotates continuously through 13 numbers at its core.
The Pleiades star cluster, held sacred in Maya cosmology, completes its specific observational cycle above the Yucatan in 28 days. The Egyptian civil calendar uses 12 30-day months plus 5 days set deliberately outside the count. Threshold days, liminal days, days treated as operating under different rules. The architecture of the solution is the same across cultures, separated by oceans and millennia. The same underlying logic appearing from entirely independent starting points. This points towards something older than any of these civilizations' written histories, a common inheritance, a way of reading sky and body that predates the records that should have preserved the reasoning for it. So what happened to it? Rome did not merely introduce the Julian calendar to its conquered territories, it suppressed local timekeeping. Druids who maintained the Celtic lunar calendar were criminalized. Their oral knowledge was systematically disrupted. When the Gregorian calendar replaced the Julian in 1582, populations across Catholic Europe lost days from the legal record without warning. People went to sleep under one system and woke under another. Buildings were dated by calendars that no longer legally existed. Scholars of ethnoastronomy have noted a consistent pattern in how these transitions were framed, never as political suppression, always as correction, modernization, the rational replacing the superstitious, the clock replacing the body, the state replacing the sky. And in most documented cases, the administrators who carried out these transitions understood neither the full logic of what they were dismantling, nor the full consequences of what they were installing. They appear to have been executing a decision at a level above their understanding, their function only implementation. The archive gaps around the 1920s reform campaign are specific and strange. Key League of Nations correspondence is missing. Documents are referenced in meeting minutes that do not appear in the official collection. The Cotsworth papers at the University of Toronto show deliberate gaps concentrated around the years of most intense lobbying, the precise years when adoption was closest. Not water damage, not routine archival loss, gaps that cluster around the moments that mattered most. I keep coming back to a question that the calendar history literature almost never asks. What would it have felt like to live inside a system where every month was identical, where the first of the month always fell on the same day of the week, where you knew without checking, bodily, instinctively, exactly where you were in the cycle, where your work, your rest, your ritual, your commerce all moved in the same rhythm as the moon, and perhaps in the same rhythm as the body carrying all of it. This is not mysticism, it is a practical question about what chronological irregularity does to a human nervous system across generations. To never quite know without external confirmation where you are in the year, to experience time as something imposed from outside rather than something felt from within. There is early research in chronobiology suggesting that alignment or disalignment with natural cycles affects human health, cognition, and emotional regulation in measurable ways. The field is young. The implications have barely been explored, but the question will not close. There are indigenous communities that held the 28-day count into the modern era. Ethnographers who lived among them described something difficult to quantify, a different quality of presence, a different relationship to urgency and waiting, as though time were something inhabited rather than chased. We dismissed this as underdevelopment. The evidence suggests it may have been the opposite. Eastman died in 1932. Kodak quietly reverted to the Gregorian calendar in 1989 after 61 years on the fixed system. No press release, no public accounting. The World Calendar Association still operates. The 13-moon calendar movement still advocates for the 28-day cycle.
Both exist at the margins, unfunded by institutions, absent from curricula. The shape that emerged from all of this was not a conspiracy with a named architect. It was a pattern, recurring, cross-cultural, multi-century. The consistent replacement of systems that synchronized human beings with the natural world by systems that synchronized human beings with institutional authority instead, not through fire, not through dramatic confrontation, through the quieter mechanism of substitution, something just functional enough that no one screamed, just workable enough that the loss accumulated silently across generations. We did not mourn the 13 months. We were never informed they existed. We did not miss the rhythm. We were born already displaced from it, handed a broken instrument, and told it was the only instrument there had ever been. I am not arguing the Gregorian calendar is a weapon. I am not arguing the 13-month calendar is a cure. I am asking why a system mathematically cleaner, biologically coherent, historically documented across dozens of independent civilizations, and seriously championed by major institutional actors less than a century ago, occupies the margins of history, while a calendar assembled from Roman imperial vanity runs every life on Earth. I am asking what the right word is for what happened to the rhythm, whether lost is accurate or whether taken is closer to what the evidence supports. I am asking why the silences in the archive always concentrate around the transitions, around the specific moments when one way of measuring time ended and another began. And I am asking what we once knew about time, about the body, about the sky, that we have forgotten so completely we no longer know there is anything to remember.